Coming to you entirely pre-recorded from the Garage of Solitude, I'm Mario Francisco Robles.
And I'm Brett Thomas Miro. Let's dance.
And this is episode 148 of the Fanboy Podcast. Brett, what are you watching or playing this week?
Excellent. So, little update from last week. I mentioned a game I've been playing called Death's Door. I rolled credits on it yesterday.
Oh, my.
And I am happy to say that the game was delightful all the way through. It was really fun. And it does seem like there's actually a bit of end game content, which I think I may continue on and do. I enjoyed the game that much. It was very, very fun, very challenging at points with some of the boss fights, but just a real fun time exploring and finding these little nooks and crannies and secrets. They do some really neat stuff with the, kind of forced isometric perspective, where like if you kind of explore, you might get around a little corner that like is not quite visible, and then the camera will kind of shift, and you're like, oh, there's a little secret hallway over here. And,
I like that. See, that sort of stuff, I'd be obsessed looking for things like that.
Yeah, so it's very cool, and it's a very pretty game. Like I mentioned too, great soundtrack, but yeah, it was. I had a real pain in the ass of that final boss, but hey, it was well worth it. It was fun. And then apparently there's also like a special ending if I get all the stuff. And I was like, you know what, this one I might actually get all the things. It's honestly, there's really not much else coming out for the time being that I'm like crazy jazzed about. So I might start digging into the backlog. So maybe I'll have some fun gems and revisit some old classics in the coming weeks, and we'll talk about that. I do also want to mention something I've been watching. I checked out the first episode a couple of weeks ago, but I finally got around to episodes 2 and 3 of Our Flag Means Death, which is on HBO Max.
Yeah, that's
Taika Waititi joint. He's also in it in a pretty prominent role. You know what? The first episode I enjoyed. It was a little slow, but got like very fun towards the end. They're half-hour episodes, so it's not too much of a an investment. But episodes 2 and 3 were really, really funny. They really upped it. And episode 3, I think, had a couple of cool cameos. Had Fred Armisen from SNL and Leslie Jones, another SNL alum. And it's really fun. So I think I'm going to continue on with it. I really enjoy the show a lot. It's I would highly recommend checking that out. It's the same I think creative crew, or at least some of the people from What We Do in the Shadows. So if you watch that show or enjoy that on FX, I think you'll be into this. It's not mockumentary style like The Office. Like What We Do in the Shadows is mockumentary style. This is not like that, but same kind of tone. So I think you would enjoy it.
Nice. All right. Well,
what about you?
Yeah, on my end, I'm still making my way through Better Call Saul on the watching end of things, but I did manage to sneak in a quick binge of a 3-part true crime documentary series. I'm a sucker for those. I love anything that has to do with serial killers. I love anything that is immersive and brings me back to some period in American history. And Netflix just so happens to have one called Crime Scene, the Times Square Killer. And I love it because it takes place in New York City in 1979 and 1980, and it's jam-packed with archival footage of New York City in that era. And I was born in 83, so it's a couple of years after, but like I still very much recognize that city. And I remember Times Square when it was that way, not like the Disney-fied thing it is today. Right. So I went down this quick 3-episode rabbit hole. It's it's a short docuseries, and I loved it. If you're into true crime, I strongly recommend. It's on Netflix. Crime Scene, the Times Square Killer. They did an awesome job on that. Now, I'm not really playing anything new, but I did add something to my reading list since I've been trying to get through some graphic novels that have been on my shelf that are like these seminal works that I bought because I want to own all the seminal works, but haven't actually read them all yet. So get this. This is like, I told Bill from Batman on Film I was reading this today for the first time, and he was like mad at me that it took me this long. But I read that I've begun Batman Year One. Okay, have you read Batman Year One?
I have read Batman Year One.
Yeah, see, so I think I'm the only person on earth who hasn't. And listen, I love Frank Miller. I love the Dark Knight Returns. I love a lot of his stuff. But I haven't checked out Year One, and I know that this film that book has been referred to as like a touchstone for not only the Christopher Nolan trilogy, but also the Matt Reeves, the Batman that just came out.
Right.
So I had to see what all the fuss was about. What is it about this book that's so special? And I got to tell you, right away, I was pulled in like hardcore into this world. I love the psychological sort of layers they give each of the characters. You can kind of
Yeah.
see now how that really did lay the groundwork, or the foundation for a lot of the more recent Batman exploration,
Sure.
And something interesting happened too, I should mention, that while I'm reading it, in my head, I've got Michael Giacchino Batman music playing. And whenever I'm reading Bruce or Batman's voice, I have Battinson's voice stuck in my head. So I feel like that to me is the first sign that adaptation has absolutely crossed over into
Right.
like, this is just how I take in Batman stories now.
Right.
So I'm watching Better Call Saul. I'm looking at the Times Square Killer, and I'm reading Batman Year One. That's what my week of media consumption has been. And I think let's go ahead and get into some news to discuss. Let's get into the Superman on Film update for May the 6th, 2022. Now, unfortunately, this update is going to be a lot more like some of our earlier ones, where there wasn't a ton to say because there hasn't been anything new, so to speak, in terms of news or hot crazy rumors. But something I just wanted to share. There's a tweet from Frosty from Collider, Stephen Weitraub. Are you familiar with him at all? Yeah. So Frosty is like me. He's another avowed Superman fanatic who always seems to have his ear to the ground for anything related to Superman. And he was very much trying to find out Henry Cavill's future a few years back. He's someone who's out there with, beating the pavement, trying to find whatever he can about Superman. And he tweeted something a couple days ago that I just want to share with you guys, because I feel some of this way too. But he says, if you know me, you know how much I love Superman. So when I saw WB Pictures chairman Toby Emmerich tonight, walked right up to him and asked about the next Superman movie. Won't say what he said to me since it might have been off the record, but progress is being made. So listen, there's no details there. There's not a lot to go on, but if Frosty spoke to Emmerich and he's basically pulling the "my lips are sealed" card, but something's happening. Something's happening. So that I have goosebumps thinking about that. I have literal goosebumps. I'm such a dork, but I'm like, something is coming. There's going to be news on a Superman movie soon, and I'm very excited for that. And the only other sort of like rumor Superman on film related that I wanted to bring up here before we go to our next topic is there have been some interesting murmurs that we might not, or no, I should say, we've heard that we might not see Henry Cavill Superman in the flesh, that we might see some archival footage of him on a TV screen. We've also heard that he might get retconned just completely, entirely out of the continuity and have Supergirl take over. There's an interesting thing that came up in the last few days about how we might see old school versions of these characters too. Like we're talking like when it comes to Batman, there's a shot at Adam West's Batman. But when it comes to Superman, there's people talking about we may very well see Christopher Reeve's Superman in the Flash movie. So when it comes to all this multiverse stuff, when we see Barry going to all the different Earths and I guess maybe testing out his powers for the first time, maybe it's in a quick sort of montage, I would imagine. But apparently it looks like we're going to bump into even the Linda Carter Wonder Woman. There's all these rumors of like vintage versions of these characters are going to be shown or glimpsed in some fashion in this Flash movie. And that to me is something like, I feel like I've been hearing little murmurs like that for years. I remember hearing something like 3 or 4 years ago, and at the time people thought it was going to be for one of the CW crossovers. But I remember hearing like 3 or 4 years ago that Warner Brothers was working on like an uncanny, perfect photorealistic CG model of the Christopher Reeve Superman to use in some sort of upcoming media. So I wonder now if any of that was being done in anticipation of Flashpoint or what. But either way, I've been hearing murmurs that we might see the Reeve Superman in a new DC thing for a while now. So I'm just really curious if that's going to happen. And I'm just curious, Brett, how would you feel if they do find a way to work in, you see, the Adam West Bats, or you see the Linda Carter Wonder Woman, or you see the Christopher Reeve Superman? Does that when you hear that, does that excite you right away, or does that make you go,
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's part of the fun, of having the Flash and doing a storyline like this where you're doing the multiverse. Yeah, if everything's going to be connected, if you're going to bring Michael Keaton back, then yeah, I guess we should see a glimpse of everything. I'm curious. I just hope they don't overdo it with
yeah,
Christopher Reeve, and they don't it's not too long of a lingering scene or something. Because we've talked about before. Obviously, they probably saw the success of bringing Luke back, in the Mandalorian and stuff, but. I've expressed my concern. I'm like, okay, I've seen him twice now. But I don't know if I need to push him in there again. You know what I mean? Unless you're gonna totally recast the role.
Yeah.
And and he's that character. But with Christopher Reeve, also it's different. Mark Hamill's still alive. Christopher Reeve, obviously, we know what happened with him. The tragic accident, and then obviously he's no longer with us. So it gives me Tupac, hologram Tupac vibes, which I'm like, I don't know. So, it's I'm trepidatious, but again, that is the fun. If we're showing that all these things do exist in the continuity somehow, they're parallel universes to everything, have some fun with it. Give us a little fan service. So it's yes, but I'm trepidatious when you say the Christopher Reeve thing.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny you mentioned that, what you just said about seeing all that stuff, so to speak. Andy Muschietti said early on this thing about how this movie is going to establish that everything you've ever seen exists.
Right.
And I feel like that almost is a clue, or it's a hint of we're going to be reaching back. It's not just Michael Keaton. Everything DC is actually somewhat canon with this movie, because we're gonna basically we're going to reveal that all these different Earths house all the different DC iterations that you've seen over the years, And I just listen, I'm with you. I hope that it's not hokey. First of all, I hope it looks great, because if we're talking about if we're using those Luke cameos as some sort of comparison, I felt like when he showed up at the end of Mandalorian season 2, I don't think they quite nailed it. You know what I mean? To me, he still looked like a CG character. They got it now in Book of Boba Fett. I'm like, that looks almost absolutely perfect. But that's the thing. If they're going to do this, it better look amazing. If they have it up there and I have to do one of those, if it's like when Henry Cavill's mustache all over again in Justice League, where I'm like, are you really asking me to ignore how
there's the uncanny valley?
Yeah.
And that's the thing where you kind of feel like you're like, oh, it looks a little off. I'm revolted. It's like, and I don't want that, because then it does kind of ruins it. I hope it's just quick little glimpses. It could be really fun where he's just kind of zipping through and there's a quick thing and he's like, oh, and they look at each other and then he just zips out, you can have a little fun with that, but it also could get a little Looney Tunes too, right? So hopefully they find the balance,
Hopefully they find that sweet balance, and it doesn't just feel like they're using nostalgia as a crutch, because that's the big thing, right?
Right.
But then again, that was my big concern with Spider-Man No Way Home, and they ended up nailing it. Because when I heard those initial rumors about Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, I'm like, oh, I hope that they do this justice, that it actually pays off. It means something to the current continuity. It pushes our main hero further along in his hero's journey, and isn't just some kind of, hey, look, here are older versions of these characters you liked.
Right.
So I hope that they handle it with some thought and dignity, and don't just try to cash in and make us go, oh, I remember him.
And listen, there are those that I've seen very vocal people online criticize No Way Home and say that, without the nostalgia play, the movie's really not that good and a mess. And I definitely fall in the camp where I really enjoyed it and loved it. But there are people that felt like they did kind of lean on the nostalgia crutch. So, I mean, you're not going to please everybody, but, it's tricky when you're doing this stuff. So we'll see what happens.
Mhm.
But hey, like I said, I think overall as a fan, it's cool. Hopefully they do it well. You know.
Mhm. I'm just telling you right now too, if I hear any bars of the John Williams Superman march mixed into the sound for this movie, and we have a really good looking Reeve Superman on screen for a moment, I'm gonna be a mess in the theater. So I hope you're ready to hold me close, Brett.
The only thing I can hope for is that the Flash zips in on the end of Superman 2. He sees that cellophane S and he goes, "My Superman can't do that," and then he just zips right out.
he catches it out of midair, like, what the hell is this? And
Yeah, that's the right way to do it. That's the right
yeah,
way to do it.
that you know what that wouldn't be half bad.
Yeah.
But so yeah, there you go, folks. That is your Superman on film update for the week. Uh, their progress is happening according to Collider Frosty and his conversation with Toby Emmerich, and we might be seeing some old school versions of all of our heroes, including the iconic Christopher Reeve Superman in The Flash next year on June 23rd. Did I mention that's my birthday? All right, so now we're going to move on to our next bit of news. We're staying within the realm of the DC universe. A few months back, on the heels of the success of Peacemaker, James Gunn let it be known that he was working on a top secret other project, that it was going to be also a TV series for HBO Max. He alluded to the fact that it was also based on a character from the Suicide Squad. But this week, we finally found out what it is. James Gunn is currently executive producing an Amanda Waller TV series for HBO Max that will bring back Viola Davis in the iconic role that she has now played 2 different times. So, so there's our big mystery there. When you found out about this, Brett, were you happy to hear it was Amanda Waller, or were you hoping it was like the Weasel or Polka Dot Man 2 or something?
I actually would have been really into Polka Dot Man because he kind of like stole the show for the movie for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why I wasn't thinking Amanda Waller, but I was thinking like a lot of people were thinking Ratcatcher.
Yeah.
I was like, I heard that one a lot. But yeah, it's Amanda Waller. And I'm like, listen, as far as like the pedigree of actress you have in Viola Davis, that's pretty awesome that she was like on board to do this. We did also previously get comments from James Gunn that it would probably not be as much of a comedy as Peacemaker. So
yeah,
this is going to be a different genre, a different tone. And we do know, I think the only other detail we know is that it is going to continue off of where Amanda Waller was at the end of Peacemaker, which, as we know, her daughter outed her as heading up Task Force X and a lot of the shitty shit she does,
yeah,
in the Black Ops, part of the government. So
yeah.
I think there's a lot of potential with the series. Like I said, the pedigree is top notch. I think there's also like a producer that was involved with the Watchmen series, which
Oh
I
yeah,
thought
well,
was tremendous.
that's what I was. Yeah, that's what I
Wanna
was
talk
about to
that?
get
Yeah.
to. Because aside from this not being a comedy, being less comedic, as James Gunn put it, there's a whole different sort of creative guard here, because James Gunn is just executive producing, which is really one of those, he's kind of hands off in a creative
Right.
sense. The writer of the piece is actually a writer from the HBO Max's Watchmen series, which I know you were a big fan of, and
Yeah.
I was too. That was, and that fills me with hope. Her name is Crystal Henry. Crystal Henry is set to write and executive produce the series. So to me, that fills me with some hope that this is going to have, you know me, I love my DC stuff, my superhero stuff that has
Yeah.
something to say. And Watchmen definitely had something to say. And even Peacemaker, in its own offbeat, quirky, comedic sort of
Yeah.
way,
Sure
had
did.
something to say about America and society and patriotism and all that. So getting the writer from Watchmen, I think it bodes well for this project. I just wonder, like, but I at the same time, the flip side of that is I was a little bit bummed that Gunn is not writing and directing it, because one of the things that made Peacemaker, I think, work so well is he wrote and directed. He was hands-on for that series.
Yeah.
And in James Gunn, I trust. So when I heard he's only exec producing, I'm like, but then I see
he might come in and direct like an episode or something though.
maybe,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I'm sure even though it's a title thing, executive producer, I'm sure he will have his like little stamp, on this and
Yeah.
his influence in there. I feel
Yeah.
like even when he's executive producing, I feel like his fingerprints are on things.
Uh-huh.
So
What's interesting about it too is, you know how Gunn has talked about the potential for cameos and DC sort of crossovers, that he said that, that Justice League cameo at the end of Peacemaker season 1 was really just kind of like the start of things, that he's planning on bringing in other ones as long as they
yeah,
serve the story and all that. You'd have to imagine that also applies to this series.
yeah,
And Amanda Waller is an interesting character because she has links to lots of other characters in the DC universe. She's not just associated with the Suicide Squad. In fact,
right,
when we met her, we see her, not that we met her, but at the end of that Suicide Squad movies where we have her having a conversation with Bruce Wayne, right?
right,
And I'm trying to think. I mean, I feel like there are some other examples, but the point is, Waller is a character that can branch out. So as we get into her world and the day-to-day life of this person, there's a chance that we're going to see her interact with some other major characters along the way. So I think that's kind of interesting too. I wonder how much it's going to interweave with whatever Peacemaker 2 ends up being, since,
right,
her daughter is a primary character on Peacemaker.
right.
Is that character also going to cross over into this one? Is whatever happens here going to bleed into Peacemaker season 2? Like, I have a feeling there's probably going to be some synergy here. So
Yeah, I feel like that's what I was thinking too. I'm like, I
yeah,
think whatever happens here will kind of be like maybe like bridge a gap. Well, I mean, I don't know if this is just in development now. I feel like they might be further along with the Peacemaker 2 at this point. I mean, who knows? I don't know
yeah,
like what the timeline is. So I'd
hmm
be curious if this does come in and bridges the gap between, or maybe they come out very close together and it's like
yeah,
more like a concurrent thing.
yeah,
We'll see how that works out. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. I think they have a chance, to really do, like we said, like a different genre here. Maybe it'll be like a political kind of like, spy thriller or something like that. They could really go like a cool angle with it. And then bring in some characters. Maybe they introduce like a big, like, what if we get like, and not that he normally works with Suicide Squad, but like they bring in like a new Green Arrow or something, or like they bring in
yeah,
like another hero, and then like we find out, oh, they're doing a Green Arrow HBO Max series because now the CW one's done. So we could get Oliver Queen in there. We can get another like rich playboy superhero, since we don't have as of yet, aside
yeah.
from Keaton, we don't have like that kind of Batman-ish character. So that could be a cool way to do it, and then give him an HBO Max series and really like branch it off. So I would love to see like that. Like,
I mean,
that
imagine if through her recruiting for Task Force X, imagine if through this is how we get to see Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke
I
again,
was just thinking
right?
that. Yeah,
Like, imagine, she brings him on because she hears about this mercenary criminal and whatever, and she wants to get him to be involved with them.
that would be
And
awesome.
and that segues into his solo series. I've always kind of said too that, like, the way to restore the Snyderverse isn't necessarily through making JL 2 and 3, but it's through taking the characters from that world and now giving them new life. So if
Yeah,
we can finally get to see Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke in an HBO Max series that comes from the Amanda Waller series, that would be pretty damn great.
yeah. There's a lot of
So
potential with that, just because, like you said, like she has connections to like a
yeah.
lot of DC characters. So I
hmm
think that's smart. I think there's a very good reason why they are doing an Amanda Waller series.
Yeah.
So
I'm
this could
very
be cool.
excited. Very excited. Now we're going to stay over in the Marvel frame of things because this weekend, the big movie opening up is a Marvel picture. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness comes out at long last this weekend. And before I get into some of the box office projections and how this film is poised to do this weekend, I'm just curious. Here we are. It opens tonight. How are you feeling about Doctor Strange? What is your internal hype level? Is it a movie you want to see? You're on the edge of your seat to do? Is it something you're going to watch out of obligation because you watch all the Marvel movies? Do you kind of not really give a crap at all? But like where are you at on the spectrum when it comes to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like the original Doctor Strange was very much like I kind of watched it out of obligation. I really wasn't that interested, other than
Mm-hmm.
the fact that I like Benedict Cumberbatch. I definitely my hype level for this is definitely much higher than that. It's definitely not like Spider-Man No Way Home hype, or even like how I was excited for like Avengers
Yeah.
movie hype. But I think the multiverse angle and like the inclusion of Scarlet Witch and when we know where she's at after the events of WandaVision, and the fact that I know this seems to be tying into some of the what if stuff, which I still haven't finished. Shame on me, but I've watched enough that I
You
know
got to watch
characters.
4 at least. You got to watch
Yeah,
the Doctor Strange episode. You
yeah.
must.
So I'll have to watch that this weekend because we're going to be seeing it. We'll have seen it by the time we do next week's episode.
Yes,
We,
next week we're
we
going to
already
have a
know.
whole spoiler discussion on this movie. But
Yes.
for today, we're just
Um, yeah. So as
preview.
I said, if I had to give it like a 1 out of 10, like the original Doctor Strange, I was probably like a 4. This one I'd say I'm probably at like a 7, like a 7. Like I'm
Okay.
definitely interested.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the multiverse, and the fact that we have Sam Raimi, behind the helm is that actually kind of adds a little bit to the hype for me. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I got you. Yeah, for me, it's funny. You're taking the words right out of my mouth. When it comes to the first Doctor Strange, that was totally a obligation viewing. It
yeah.
was, well, I got to see what happens, where this Doctor Strange character fits into the grand scheme of things. We're heading towards Infinity War, and I'm sure I'm going to need to know. So I guess I'll see this Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah.
This time around, I'm definitely more interested, more organically interested, but it's interesting and totally coincidental why I'm more interested. Because had I not gotten COVID last month and been forced to stay home and just watch a bunch of TV that I had been putting off for a while, if not for that, I wouldn't have binge watched Marvel's What If. And
Right,
Marvel's What If is what really suddenly made me go, oh, I got to see this next Doctor Strange movie.
right.
Because not only is there the Doctor Strange episode, there's another one that seems to factor into this movie that's called What If Ultron Had Won. Have you seen that one at least?
No, so
You got to watch
I've
that
seen
too.
Captain Carter, and I've seen. You know what? I think I saw like half of the Doctor Strange
Yeah.
episode with Evil
Okay.
Doctor Strange.
Okay.
Or I feel like I might have like nodded out in that one. So I
Yeah.
saw that. And I saw what other one did I see? Whatever I saw like the first like 2.
Yeah.
Maybe I saw the first 4, but I feel like the fourth one is the Doctor Strange one. It was a little iffy for me. I think I might have fell
Okay.
asleep. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the 5th or 6th one is What If Ultron Had Won? And it basically poses the question of like, what if Ultron's plot had succeeded in Age of Ultron, where he does transfer his consciousness to Vision's body? And he does defeat the
Uh,
Avengers. He becomes that impenetrable, unstoppable force. And essentially, I mean, I don't want to spoil that episode for you,
well,
but
you've ruined it.
what? No, it's just
No,
the
I'm joking.
premise.
I'm joking.
But
Yes, I did
watching the
remember
trailer,
a
you
scene that.
see Doctor Strange being escorted by an army of Ultron-looking robots.
Right.
And that is also right out of Marvel's What If. So that's why I feel like you need to watch it. But also, like, it makes me feel weird that I needed to see What If to give such a damn about Doctor Strange too. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
wonder, like, to the lay people out there, are they excited for this movie just because, oh, wow, I really want to see the next Doctor Strange movie? Or, like, I'm intrigued by that
Yeah.
because
Or do you
honestly,
just want to see what crazy shit comes out of the multiverse?
yeah,
'Cause, like,
I don't know
yeah,
I don't know what's drawing people, but I guess the point of the matter is it is drawing people because
right.
Brett, the box office projections are in. We don't know where it's going to line up. Projections sometimes are spot on, sometimes they're laughably off, but we're going to go with what Variety is saying because Variety is a trusted industry trade. Leslie, I was looking for at Variety for some comparison reasons. Sorry. When it comes to recent comparisons, Variety points out that The Batman opened up to $128 million. All right, I'm just bringing that up because that's the only superhero fare that's come out so far in 2022.
Right.
What do you think, Brett, it is projected Doctor Strange 2 is projected to do? With Doctor Strange with the Batman opening at 128, where do you think Doctor Strange 2 is supposed to open?
purely because it is like, an MCU movie and it's
Yeah.
connected and it seems to have like a lot of repercussions moving forward. I'm gonna say we're looking at like 180 to 200 million.
Wow. Okay, so you're looking at you're actually looking beyond the projections. But the funny thing is, the projections are supposedly rather conservative. So the
Oh,
bean counters right now are saying 150 million plus.
okay.
But there is this feeling that that's just the floor. That's just the bare minimum it's going to make, and it is going to make past that. And it's just crazy to think, by the way, that a Doctor Strange movie can make more than a Batman movie, first of all. But
Right.
also, like, who would have thought, like, with the apathy that I feel, I don't think we're alone in the apathy we showed the first movie of seeing it just by obligation.
I didn't even see it in theaters.
You
To
didn't
be,
see it in
I saw it.
theaters.
I saw it
Wow.
after it came out, like a while later, and then I was able to like watch it like on digital streaming. So
Wow.
that's like how I was like,
Yeah. Well, this the interest in this character has shot up a great deal ever since, obviously, in Infinity War and in Endgame. Doctor Strange had a lot going for him there, and I feel like
and in No
people,
Way Home.
and in No Way Home, that's right.
And it's like
I'm
it's
trying
funny.
to
I liked him in all of his appearances that were not his own movie.
that we're
Like
not his.
but like I said, like each one he showed up in, like Infinity War, and Endgame, and No Way Home.
Yeah,
I think I have started to like him more each time. Like I think he's a cool character. I like his whole gimmick.
yeah,
I like his powers. I think he's pretty neat. And like I said, I really like Benedict Cumberbatch. I think he
yeah,
brings a little something to the role. But it's just that first movie just like didn't really do anything for me. So
yeah. And meanwhile, look, and that one opened at 85 mil. And now the sequel's opening to 150 mil, supposedly, at
that's an
least.
improvement.
So I would say that is a marked improvement.
Yeah.
And listen, we're going to see how well it fares. I've heard a little preliminary buzz on it. No spoilers. I've largely avoided those, but I have heard some people say that it's a big MacGuffin hunt, that you're chasing different these items, and the story itself is kind of bare thin, and that really, aside from some of the cool multiverse gaga and razzle dazzle, your favorite phrase,
Yeah.
that it's a little bit of a hollow experience. I hope that I'm wrong, and I hear that the style is great. I hear Sam Raimi is great visually, and the bringing the horror elements. I hear stylistically it's a treat, but I hear the story is a little threadbare there. So I guess we'll see how we feel when we go see it on IMAX on Monday, and we'll
We'll
share our
find out.
thoughts on
IMAX, very excited.
149. Yeah, very nice. Um, and now, sticking along in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel's always had a thing where their villains are supposedly crappy. Going back to Phase One, people have always complained about the villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and save for a few key ones like Thanos, there's not usually a lot to write home about when it comes
Right.
to the antagonists in these movies. But there's talk that our boy Christian Bale is going to be the best MCU villain yet, according to Taika Waititi. And well, let's expand on that. I mean, look for the quotes. But while I look for the quotes, are you surprised to hear that Christian Bale's Gorr the God Butcher might actually be worth a damn? Because I didn't, just based on that name.
Right.
It
So
sounds
I
like
mean,
hokey.
it's a little hokey because that's the character's name, but it is what it is. But he seems pretty badass, just like from the comics and some of like the illustrations I've seen of him. But I mean, listen, you got Christian Bale. So I would hope you're gonna do something like a little extra with him than just the usual like let me grimace and snarl. I mean, not for nothing, like Thor 3, like you got Kate Blanchett, who is an amazing actress. Like I'm a huge fan of hers, and she was just like there. She did her little thing,
Yeah.
and that was it. Like she just showed up, and she had some presence, but there was really nothing like that special about her. Like the
Mhm.
only thing that made her like a little relatable was that you found out that spoilers for Thor Ragnarok, if you haven't seen it yet, she was actually like Thor's what, like sister. Yeah,
Yeah.
or like half sister. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that kind of they tried to use that to give it a little more of like a personal like effect on Thor, but it was so thin, and it was just like, oh, you're gonna tell me that now, and then have us like stop her and kill her like right away. So I don't know, like they've gotten some big actors to do some of these roles, but really, aside from Thanos, Josh Brolin's awesome performance, none of them have really done anything. So, and I've heard this line before. I feel like so many directors have said like, "Oh, we have the best, villain this time. We have the
Yeah.
best villain this time." I mean, honestly, if aside from Thanos, your best villain was Kingpin in Daredevil.
Oof. Yeah, that's
You know
true.
what I mean? Like you really
Yeah.
haven't had anyone come close to Thanos and Josh Brolin's performance or D'Onofrio as Kingpin, in my
Yeah.
opinion. No one has come anywhere close. And granted, listen, Daredevil had a show; they could develop him a lot longer over time, but he was compelling and actually had like depth.
Hmm.
So I just don't know. Like you have an amazing actor, Christian Bale. I also haven't seen him in anything in like a really long time.
Yeah.
I think the last time I saw him in was the movie Vice, where played Dick Cheney. I think that was the
Hmm.
last like big release I saw him in.
Yeah,
So
that might be. Yeah, I might be able to
that was
say
a
exactly
few
the
years
same thing.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I've heard this line before. So I don't know.
Well,
Prove me
here's the thing.
wrong.
I'm with you, but to me, Taika Waititi is a special filmmaker. To
Yeah.
me, he doesn't strike me as like a studio shill. There's some of these guys when they go out there and talk, you can almost tell that Kevin Feige's hand is up their ass or something.
Right.
Like whenever John Watts talks about something, I don't really put too much into it. Like a lot of the Marvel directors, I'm like, yeah, you're just doing what you got to do to hype up
Yeah.
your movie. Taika Waititi, he's got street cred. He makes stuff that's awesome that's not Marvel related. Also, like What We Do
Yes.
in the Shadows, like that pirate one that you're
Our flag
watching.
means death. Yes.
Yes. He's not someone who like necessarily has to kiss ass and play the game and do all that sort of stuff. So when he says, and this is the quote I found it, he says, "In my humble opinion, we have probably the best villain that Marvel's ever had in Christian Bale." So I mean, to me, coming from him, I kind of believe it. There's something to that. That means that he wrote this and directed this in a way where this is a villain that we're gonna be upset about. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's going to be stakes. He's going to be a threat to our hero. We're going to be worried about our hero. I don't think Waititi would say this if it's just going to be another one of these kind of crappy disposable villains that
Sure.
we've gotten in the past. So I guess I want to see more. The design is really strange, right? He's bald headed and all white. It's a very unique character design. Some people thought it
Yeah.
looked a little too like bland or generic in a way. But if you look at artwork of Gorr the God Butcher, that's what he looked like.
Well, we've seen is that action figure, right? Which looked like,
Yeah.
but I mean, but like yeah, because it was just like a little corny, like cheap action figure. It wasn't even like
Yeah.
one of like the good, nice, like high end ones.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, illustration wise, like he looks pretty cool in the comics. Like he looks pretty badass. I was like doing a little research before too. Like he has, he's got all the goods, all the bells and whistles as far as like
Yeah.
powers and strength and stuff. But at the same time, you have this movie where we kind of have the idea that like Thor is kind of going through like a midlife crisis kind of deal. There's obviously going to be some stuff with him with the Guardians. Then we have to have introduce God the Gore Butcher. We have to have Thor go through his journey, and then we know at some point Jane Foster gets involved in here and
Yes.
becomes female Lady Thor or just Thor, female Thor, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call her. And I just feel like there's a lot in there that you have to balance now. So like how much development are we really going to get for this guy where his
Yeah.
gimmick is just that he wants to destroy all the old gods? Like that's his
Yeah.
main thing is he's called Gorr the God Butcher. He doesn't like all these gods and he wants to get rid of them. And also, if you've also glimpsed in the trailer, I think we might have
Zeus.
discussed that. Yeah, we're going to the Greek pantheon. So I'm like, how good is he going to be? How much time are you going to be able to give him? Because
Mhm.
you need time for that. So
You know what I'm wondering too? Now, just
just
kind
like
of
a Waititi though. So
in Taika, I trust.
yeah, yes,
But also in terms of how they're going to handle things in this movie, I'm just curious. Do you think that the Jane Foster, who is Mighty Thor in the trailer, do you think that's the same Jane Foster from Thor 1 and 2? Or is this going to be some sort of multiverse deal where she's the Thor on her world? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's the part I can't quite
I
tell.
was gonna bring that up, but then I thought I
Yeah,
should stop talking. And I'm glad you brought it up though, because that was literally my next point. I was like,
yeah.
that's the other thing too, because like now if she's not the one that we've had the first,
We
couple
got
of
to explain
movies,
how she
we
became
got to
Mighty
explain
Thor.
this one, and it's
Yeah,
it's all connected. We got to tie it in. So
yeah,
yeah, I don't know, man. It just seems
yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts here. I'm sure the movie can be 2.5 hours, but that's a lot.
That is a lot.
It
That is
just
a lot.
is. Not no, it's nothing. It's not like a bad thing off the bat, but I've just seen it time and time again.
Yep.
You only have so much time.
You only have so much time. But you know what? I have a surprising amount of time for, Brett.
What do you have a lot of time for?
The new Chippendales movie. And I never thought I'd say
Yeah,
that. The
yeah.
Chippendale Rescue Ranger movie. I said Chippendales like the male strippers, by the way.
Yes,
But the
which they have a gag
Chippendale,
about that in the new trailer.
yes. Yeah, like I this movie was not on my radar until you sent me the trailer. And I even thought there's something must be wrong with Brett. Why does he think I would want to watch a
Yeah,
Chippendale Rescue Ranger movie?
which is a Disney Plus streaming movie too. It's not coming
Yes,
out in theaters. It's going straight to
yes.
Disney Plus.
Like in my mind, just reading the title, I'm like, oh, this is like the Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel, like one of these like crappy live
Right.
action, adaptations of an old cartoon. So imagine my surprise when I click on it and I see this like very meta, fourth wall breaking, Who Framed Roger Rabbit type of movie with Chippendale at the center of the story.
Right.
This thing looks like it's going to be insane.
So we should talk about now the people behind this. So the
Yeah,
people behind this are from the Lonely Island, who
yeah.
famously Andy Samberg, and I forget the other guys' two names that are in it,
But it's all
but
Saturday Night Live alum.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's all Saturday Night Live alum, and you also have John Mulaney. So John Mulaney is playing Chip, Andy Samberg is playing Dale, and yeah, like you said, it is like the Who Framed Roger Rabbit for our generation. I don't
yeah,
know how they pulled this off, but they somehow got Disney to allow them license to like a bunch of their characters. There's just in the most recent trailer. There's two trailers out right now. In the most recent one, I mean, we saw Flounder from Little Mermaid. There's
yep,
like a Gumby looking character. We have what looks like an old, grown up, washed up Peter Pan, which I
yes,
blew my mind. I was like, this is incredible. Like they got carte blanche to just do crazy shit with this,
yeah,
and it looks like it is made for people who grew up with Chippendales, and it's blended with live action, and
yep,
it kind of basically looks at them in like a reality setting as if like they were like a real thing. It happened in our world, and now they're kind of like washed up. They're retired. They've split up. They've done their own thing,
yeah,
and I am really excited. I think it comes out this month too. I think it's like May 20th, and it's going straight to Disney Plus. So I
yeah.
think that is going to be a really fun one, and it looks like it's going to be I think it's going to lean a little more skew a little older. I mean, not
I
to say
think
that I
so
don't think
too.
little kids will be able to not
Yeah,
I don't think little kids will be able to not watch it, but I think it is towards people of a certain age.
for sure, for sure.
So I'm actually
Uh,
very excited. So check those trailers out if you haven't yet. It might be on
yeah.
your radar. You'd be
I
surprised.
love the bit where, they started off as 2D cartoons, right? And then he references one of them, Chip or Dale,
It was
references
Dale.
doing the CG conversion surgery.
Yeah, so Dale is a 3D CG, fully rendered CG
And he
character,
looks, yeah. But
and
then the
Chip
other
looks like
one,
his old animation, but they gave it like a little bit of like a three dimensionality to it,
yeah.
But he's like the original animation style from the
So
show.
you have
Great.
Chip and Dale in two different animation styles, and then at some point they encounter a character who, like you said, looks like Gumby, who looks like stop motion animation. So
Yes,
it's kind of like in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where you're seeing all these different animation styles and cartoons from different worlds. Remember, you had like Disney cartoons, you had Warner
yes,
Brothers Looney Tunes. Here, this idea of like all these different animation styles, to me, I think it's so cool and inventive and
yeah,
creative and clever, and I just want to see how they do it. So thanks for putting Chip and Dale the Rescue Rangers movie on
yeah.
my radar. And folks, if you're sleeping on this like I was, do what Brett said. find the 2 trailers on YouTube, and I guarantee you're going to be pleasantly surprised
Yeah.
at what Disney has cooked up with that movie, because it really does feel like we're getting like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit type of thing again.
Yes, very
So
cool.
that's awesome. And speaking of cool things on Disney Plus, Obi-Wan Kenobi gave us a new trailer on Star Wars Day on May the 4th. Be with you. We got our new look at Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I have to just mention, May the 4th is also my son's birthday. So my son was born on Star Wars Day, and my recent daughter, Delilah, was born on April 18th. You know what's big about April 18th there, Brett?
No.
April 18th.
5 days before my birthday. That's what it was.
April 18th, 1938 is when Action Comics #1 came out, introducing the world to Superman.
Oh,
so my kids
cool.
are born on these epic days, man. So, but anyway, yeah. So on May the 4th, we got to look at a new trailer for Kenobi. Brett, what were your impressions of the trailer?
So yeah, this trailer got me so hype. I already love the tone of it. I love the look of it. There's been some really also nice little variations on the Duel of the Fates theme that I've heard floating out throughout these trailers, and it is tickling me in all the right spots.
Yep.
So I am very excited. Well, what were your thoughts? And then maybe we could talk a little details in it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I am bought in hook, line, and sinker. Hook, line, and sinker.
That's what they say.
Listen, we're recording this on Cinco de Mayo, and in this house we celebrate that with tacos and margaritas. So I'm surprised that's the first slur I've had of
right.
But yeah, so I'm already bought in hook, line, and sinker into this series. But this trailer in particular, we got to see a little more about the villains, these inquisitors who are looking for him, what it is that they want to do with Kenobi. You hear the female one talking about, like, I want every bounty hunter on him and finding out what he's up to. And I guess they're maybe trying to find out maybe where Luke and Leia ended up. Like, I'm not really sure what it is they want with Kenobi, or maybe it's just part of the general hunt of all the Jedi that began in Revenge of the Sith. But either way, you really get this sense that, like, he's on the run, in hiding. There's these evil, crazy Empire people coming after him. And then there's the big thing at the end where, yes, we've heard teases in the last teaser. You hear the sound, but in this one, you see like the robot arm get connected. You see the little box get activated, and you realize, like, they really lean into the fact that the big bad this season looks like it's going to be our man Darth Vader himself.
Yes.
So to me, that was like the big takeaway, that, like, they finally gave us a real look at Darth. So yeah, were there any other like standout moments for you in the trailer? That just what?
Yes, there were, and I have a little like background stuff too. So
yeah.
First off, there's a scene very early on where we see Obi-Wan talking to Uncle Owen.
Yes.
Luke's uncle. And he says when the boy comes of age, he's going to need training. And he looks at Owen looks at him and says, like, you trained his father. And I was like, ooh, that was brutal, man.
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, he's not wrong.
No.
so that was a really, really, that's nice. Like, I love that.
And totally on brand for Uncle Owen.
Oh,
if you remember, we don't spend a lot of time with Uncle Owen in A New Hope, but he's kind of gruff and he doesn't mince his words,
Right.
So I love it. They kept that. He's like you trained his dad, like you trained it, like, oof, ouch.
And you really see it too. You see on Obi-Wan's face, he kind of is like, oh, I don't have a comeback for that one.
Yeah.
Also interesting, in both trailers, we have not seen Obi-Wan with his lightsaber or even wielding a lightsaber, not once yet. Especially in this trailer, there's been a little more action in this one. And if you notice, he's doing all hand-to-hand and stuff with blasters.
Huh.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I would assume if like maybe he's vowed not to use the lightsaber anymore, like, because he's maybe also to stay hidden, I would think. But you have to imagine if he's going to meet up with Anakin and Darth again, that's when it comes out and we get the and then he starts going down with it. So that'll be really cool. So now a couple of little things. So I have talked to you about, I think we might have talked about it last week, a video game called Jedi Fallen Order.
Yes.
So that stars a new character. The game is canon, but that stars a new character that was created for the game called Cal Kestis, played by
Yes.
Cameron Monaghan.
Who
He
played the
was
Joker on
Shameless, and
Gotham.
he was also like the proto Joker, Joker on Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
So good actor. So that game takes place around the same time period as Obi-Wan. It takes place between episode 3 and episode 4.
Yeah.
And the game involves you obviously on the run, hiding from the Inquisitors. So the Inquisitors report directly to Vader. Those are Vader's henchmen. So he's got all these Inquisitors, and I guess after Order 66, they said, hey, we didn't get everybody. So he got a bunch of these crazy Sith Lords on board, and he's sending them out on missions to exterminate the rest of the Jedi. So the game very much leans heavily into that. And they have like cool names, like they're like the second sister, the third sister, and like I know the guys might have like different names. I don't know if there's like any. I feel like you fight a lot of like women Inquisitors in that game that I can remember. So they have like these little titles. So this show is obviously has the Inquisitors in it, and I'm wondering because there was a little quote. Ewan McGregor made an interesting quote recently. I don't have the exact quote in front of me. It wasn't like crazy specific, but he was talking about the series and how well Deborah Chow, the director, knows Star Wars and all the interconnected lore. And he made a specific comment where he said, for instance, if something happened in a game, it needs to like, make sure it carries over and is consistent with what we're doing in the show. And he specifically said a video game.
Yeah.
So I was like, And actually in season 2 of The Mandalorian, or it might have been in Book of Boba Fett, we actually do see a new droid, which is a BD unit, and that was created and original for Jedi Fallen Order. You actually have a little BD unit.
It's clearly
BD1.
on their mind. Yeah.
So it's on their mind. They're thinking about it. They're linking it into the overall lore. So I'm wondering if we might see Cal Kestis at some point on the run. And we do know a sequel is in development of Jedi Fallen Order. So not that I would think you're going to see Obi-Wan in the game. I don't think they can get Ewan McGregor to do that. But it might be a cool thing to have Cal Kestis show up in here. And then maybe that could tie and lead into where he ends up in the second game. Or like what Inquisitors are still around. Because I think I think you fight the second sister is kind of like spoilers for Jedi Fallen Order. You fight the second sister as the final boss fight in that. And then there's a really, really cool sequence after that. I won't spoil it. Obviously I think we get rid of her, I think. Or someone does. So I'll keep that vague too. She won't be there. And there was like another like one or two that showed up, but they were like big alien, thus humanoid. There was like this big alien grunt one. I forgot. It might have been like the fourth sister. So it's just an interesting timeline that they're playing with, and then we do have that game in there, and so I'm curious if we're going to see some characters intersect and
that's one of the perks, by the way, because the characters in games don't always resemble the actors who play them. More often than not, I'd say they don't. But in this case, the fact that they based Cal Kestis off of Monaghan, and it actually
it's like exactly him.
You could just have him play the role in live action, and it's just a seamless transition from game to screen.
And something else I just remembered too. This is a small little detail. I might be reading too into it, but in Disney's Galaxy's Edge, which is the new like park they have there in Disney, they recently, like within the last year or so, they did unveil with Cameron Monaghan. He was in like a little video showing it off. They made a replica hilt because you can get like your own lightsaber there.
His lightsaber.
They did the replica hilt of his lightsaber from Jedi Fallen Order.
It's like they want him to be.
So he's involved. His face is there. It's branded on things.
So
I'm wondering if we are going to see like a fun little Easter egg in there, at least, or maybe a reference of some kind. So that could be really, really neat. I don't know exactly how it lines up, year wise with that series, but it is in that same gap. So
for sure. Cool. One of my favorite standout moments, actually piggybacking on yours, is I find it intriguing that Kenobi seems to be pushing to train Luke, because when you think about A New Hope, it certainly doesn't seem like old man Hermit Kenobi is been trying to get Luke out of hiding and trying to teach him the ways of the Jedi. If anything, by the time Luke looks for him and gets him, he's like reluctant. You know what I mean? It
Right.
takes a little bit for him to decide he wants to train him. So the fact that here we are where Luke is still a young child, and mind you, and there's been this whole thing now established in the prequel trilogy that you got to start them young. You got to start them
Right.
early before they get fear and anger and other interpersonal connections into them, because otherwise they're always going to have too much emotion in them to be able to be just fully, that Zen Jedi thing. And that was the big conflict with Qui-Gon and the council. They didn't think he should train Anakin because Anakin's too old and Anakin was a child, basically. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I assume that means that throughout the course of this 6-part limited series event, which you notice they were very clear on pointing that out. Like
Yes.
they said, this is a 6-part limited series event. For most of the other shows, like they kind of leave it open-ended. And we're going to get to
Right.
Moon Knight later, which I think was supposed to be a limited event, but then
Right.
turn into something else. But here they're saying it right out of the gate. This is supposed to just be a 6-part beginning, middle, and end story here. So I assume within those 6 episodes, we might find out why maybe he starts off the series feeling like Luke needs training, and by the end he feels like I'm just going to leave Luke alone and maybe he's better off not becoming a Jedi.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because he does seem to sort of be there once we get to episode 4. Luke, remember, he doesn't come looking for Luke. Luke goes looking for Obi-Wan. He needs help because R2-D2 comes, asking about Obi-Wan Kenobi using the message from Leia. So it's just, I find it interesting that all of a sudden in this clip, it looks like it's very urgent for Obi-Wan that Luke gets training when the time is right.
Right.
But then we know that that's not going to be the case a few years from now when A New Hope happens. So that was just another bit of interesting little like character development stuff. I wonder how they're going to flesh out that arc and why he has that sort of about face when it comes to all that.
Right.
But all in all, I think what is it, May 20 something? Whenever
27th.
it is that it comes out, 27th.
I believe it was 27th,
It can't come fast enough. I need this Kenobi show in my blood, in my veins.
Injected right into me.
Yes. But now we're going to switch over to the other big thing that happened on Disney Plus this week, because Moon Knight brought its season 1 to a conclusion. And we haven't discussed any Moon Knight the last couple of weeks. So let's just kind of briefly go through episodes 4, 5, and 6. So Brent, why don't you start us off? I know you were very, very into episode 4. So talk to me about episode 4 and where you've kind of ended up here through the last 3 episodes.
Yeah, so I'll start at episode 4. I loved episode 4. It was like an Indiana Jones, like Tomb Raider kind of episode. Very, very fun. Had that high adventure as they went through the tombs. They discovered Alexander the Great's tomb. They were kind of Mark Spector had to kind of give over the control to Stephen Grant, because he's the one that has all the brains and is like smart with all that, with all like the Egyptian history and stuff. So I thought that was a really, really fun episode. I enjoyed it a lot. Then we ended up in a crazy situation with, again, this is spoilers. We're talking about everything. Mark gets shot and seemingly killed at the end of episode 4, which leads us into an excellent episode 5, where we actually learn the truth of the split identity between Mark Spector and Stephen Grant. And we basically find out that
was heavy, Doc.
Yeah, it was actually heavy. And again, Oscar Isaac carrying the whole show, obviously, on his back. He did a really good job. And I was surprised how poignant it got and how emotional it got. We find out that basically when Mark was younger, he had a younger brother. They went into explore a cave that, by their home, I guess, that they weren't supposed to. And then there was a rain came, it flooded, and his brother died. And his mother, as a result, became an abusive alcoholic and
blamed him.
Blamed him, and it was a recluse and verbally, physically, mentally abusive. And then basically Stephen Grant was this character that him and his brother loved from like a VHS, like some movie that they used to watch
Tomb
all the time.
busting or something like
Tomb
that. Yeah.
Busters. I think it was Tomb Busters
Tomb
or
busters.
something like that. So yeah, and then that was basically a character they loved, and the identity disorder kind of manifested itself and took over that British persona with that like phony kind of accent, which makes sense now why his British
Yeah.
accent was kind of weird, because like it was like a
He's
kid
not British.
doing
Yeah.
when he's not British. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And then we got into episode 6, the series finale. Well, I should say there was a lot more in episode 5. We also got introduced, very importantly, that the MCU acknowledged that there is an afterlife. So it gives a little credence to Black Panther when he has that little afterlife sequence that we all thought was maybe like a
Yep.
a hallucination. From I had a couple of margaritas today too. True story. A hallucination from the little purple plant. But now they've kind of acknowledged that there are afterlives and many different afterlives in the MCU.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a big reveal. So on top of the multiverses of madness, we now have all these afterlives. And they've also basically acknowledged, I mean, at this point, they've already acknowledged that there are Egyptian gods, but there's a lot of them. And they are very present, and they're influencing things. And we had a little ride on the Duat, which is like the river of the afterlife, like Sand River, and had a really cool sequence there where we lost Steven. And then we get to episode 6, where they had to kind of reconcile the two personalities and coexist with each other. And, then we finally got Khonshu back. And, I mean, for me, I'm just going to get into it now. Episode 6 fell very flat for me. I thought the whole villain arc at the end just kind of like fell flat with Ethan Hawke. Again, you got a great actor, and then like I don't know what you did with it. Then there was a big giant alligator woman, and that was like the big boss was a big alligator woman, and it's like that. This is a real story. It happened. All right, so there's a big alligator woman, and it turned into a big CGI crap fest at the end. And I have a couple of bones to pick. So first off, you had 6 episodes. We knew this series was going to be 6 episodes only. I loved episode 4 and 5, which I should mention featured no Moon Knight at all. There was no superhero costume, no Moon Knight at all. Okay, there was some action, there was some stuff, but no Moon Knight. A lot of character development, which is great, but no Moon Knight. So we only had Moon Knight really for like a second in the first episode, a brief fight in the second episode, and a brief fight in the third episode. Then for episodes 4 and 5, you had no Moon Knight, and then the finale, we had, I don't know, again, a brief fight at the end with Moon Knight, and that was it. Also, I don't know if you remember Kevin. What is it? Feige. Feige. I blanked out on it. Kevin Feige was like, "We certainly don't pull any punches. We don't hold anything back. Moon Knight's super violent." Show was not that violent. There were a couple of scenes where like I saw some blood, and people were getting like boomerangs in their chest and stuff, but like it was really not that violent. Like he made it sound like it was going to be Daredevil, and it was nowhere close to that. So I thought that was like a little disingenuous. Not that I was like craving bloodshed, but like just the comments maybe led me to believe there was not a lot of action in some of the episodes. So I thought that was misleading. Again, that final confrontation felt very rushed because they had to spend like 3/4 of the episode kind of resolving all the stuff from episode 5, and then you just got this. So
you think it could have used another episode or two?
Yeah, like if you were going to do episodes 4 and 5, it should have been at least like 8 episodes. So we had like 3 episodes to get back. So I know, sorry if I'm a little all over the place. Like
no. Listen, you're going through the
I'm rambling.
ride of
I'm going through the roller coaster. So
6. Yeah,
I was definitely higher on the series. The first couple episodes, I was higher than you on the first episode. I think the second and third we felt the same way. I loved episode 4 and 5, but then 6 really fell flat for me. The coolest thing was maybe like the post-credit sequence, but we could talk about that in a moment. So like how was 4, 5, and 6 for you? Are you on the same page with me? Were you as offended as I was?
I gotta tell you, I was very skeptical after the first one. I was not really sold, and I was going to watch it basically by obligation just because, hey, it's the big thing happening in geekdom. I'm going to watch Moon Knight so we can talk about it on the show. 2 and 3 definitely started to work their magic on me.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in 4, I finally got fully immersed and bought into this world. I think it was the Egyptian setting. I
Yeah.
think it was finally finding out more about the main characters and their relationship and the stuff with him and Layla, and more about Khonshu and his relationship to the other Egyptian gods, and how all these different avatars for all the different gods work and all that. So for me, like, the general note is I love how unpredictable this show was. A lot of the Marvel stuff I can see a mile away. A lot of, to me, a lot of it is just kind of predictable. I see where things are going to end up. Oh, there's going to be a swerve there. This guy's going to be the villain. I'm used to being able to kind of see what we're building towards. For me, in Moon Knight, I never had any real clue what the hell was going to happen next.
Sure.
I feel like it was shot that way, it was directed that way, it was edited that way. There is a lot of stuff where you're just meant to go, what the hell is going on? There's a talking hippopotamus talking to me right now out of nowhere, apropos of nothing. Like there's a lot of this, like, where did that come from? Yeah. So for me, 4, 5, and 6, I loved it because to me, I couldn't see any of it coming. I found it very just unpredictable and original and different than anything I'd seen before in this space. I've never seen a superhero story done this way. I've never seen any story really done this way. It's a very trippy, interesting sort of concept for a hero too. This idea of the human avatar of an ancient Egyptian god and all that sort of stuff. Right. And then once we get into 4, and there's the stuff where like Khonshu is reverting the night sky into the same star pattern that it had been thousands of years prior to try to find Amit's tomb. Like I loved it. I thought like this is so different. This is so cool. I am so into this. Same thing, episode 5, going into the afterlife stuff. What was interesting about that one was I was actually like, because of the arc of that episode and how heavy it was and what we learned about Steven, and combined with the fact that I don't really know anything about Moon Knight aside from this show.
Right.
When Steven died at the end, I thought that was like on purpose. I thought, oh, that's the point here. He's in the afterlife. He needs to make peace with himself. He needs to forgive himself. He needs to really come face to face with the harsh truths of his life. And that's why the hearts weren't balanced. That's what needed to happen. So in my mind, it was like, oh, the way he gets back to his real life now and is able to be a more complete hero is now the Stephen Grant alter ego is just gone now. And yeah, that's sad. That's bittersweet. But now it's like deep down, Steven's role has been served. The way he was there to protect Mark from the harsh times. So in a way, it was sad, but it was kind of beautiful and it was kind of poignant. And I was totally fine with now we just follow Mark from here on. So imagine my surprise at the beginning of 6 when he goes and brings him back to life. I'm like, oh no. Right. So we're still doing the multiple personality thing. Okay.
Right.
But see, for me, believe it or not, 6 didn't flatline for me. I was, by that point now, I was going for the ride, and I got into the fact that we're fighting a giant alligator lady, and that Layla now has this badass Egyptian superhero outfit.
Right.
Like I was with it. I was just by that point, I was just going for the ride and just wondering what the hell's going to happen next. Because like I said, by this point, they had me so off balanced as a viewer that I'm just like, I'm with you. I'm going for this ride. Let's do this. And I'm still trying to figure out if Ethan Hawke's character is the psychologist just a manipulation, or is it possible the psychologist has his own double personality, and that's why he looks at his foot after walking and he's got the bloody footsteps and he's like, where'd that blood come from? And Steven's like, looks like you don't know about as much about this stuff as you thought you did. Right. Like, I don't know. I was so hooked into the central mysteries of this world that yeah, it got a little crazy, but I liked it. I thought it was cool where like in the background by the pyramids, you see giant Amit and giant Khonshu fighting like Power Ranger Megazord style. And then on the
Give me that
ground
vibe.
you have Moon Knight and Layla. I don't even know if have they given her a name yet. I don't know if they've given her an alias,
No,
but we
I
see
think they did.
them fighting all the people on the ground, and I don't know. I was
Yeah,
not disappointed. I was not disappointed.
like
Go ahead.
you said some really good things. Like the show succeeded on. I mean, Oscar Isaac's performance,
Yes.
and I do agree with I always talk about this. Like I love all the weird stuff, and
Yeah.
I didn't really know where the show was going, so
Yeah.
that was exciting for me. But like I just felt like, and I appreciated that they were not afraid, I guess, to take the time to like really
Mhm.
like do some more emotional stuff and like dig a little deeper into the characters.
Yeah.
But I just felt like it needed a little more runway before it
I
took
got you.
off. You
I
know,
got
like
you.
that kind of, and yeah, it just the
I mean,
six
I will
episodes
say, yeah, I
felt kind
will
of rushed for me.
say, kind of echoing you there. I mean, it didn't bum me out, but I was surprised that that was it. Like when I realized, like, oh
Yeah,
wow, this they're wrapping up the story here, and now the next thing is season 2, presumably a year from now. So I'm like, oh wow, it's all over. Like I don't think I realized it was just 6 episodes until I was in the sixth episode was wrapping up, and I'm like, this feels an awful
right.
lot like a finale. Oh
Yeah,
crap. So yeah, so I definitely like I agree that like it ended a little abruptly. It probably could have used an episode 7 or 8.
yeah,
But with that said, I was there for the ride, and like if the first episode for me, I think I said was like a 4 out of 10. By the end, the overall experience of Moon Knight for me, I'd say was a 7 out of 10. I didn't like
yeah.
absolutely love it, but it was definitely a thumbs up experience for me.
Yeah, I think overall I'd still probably fall in like a 7 out of 10 range. Like, I think I gave episode one like a 7 out of 10. I think
Yeah,
two and three were like sevens for me. Four and five actually might have been like eights, but then I feel like the finale for me was like a six.
I
So
got you.
the
I got
law
you.
of averages says it's a seven. I don't
Yeah,
know. But we should talk about the post credit sequence really quick.
yeah.
So there
Where
is a post credit sequence.
yes,
If you didn't stay to watch through the credits, and we got well, first of all, yeah, Harrow, which is played by Ethan Hawke, appears to actually meet his demise after Mark decided not to kill him at the end of episode 6.
yeah.
And he meets his demise by a mysterious third personality, which again they kind of alluded to at the end of episode 6, where he has a
He has a
he
little
looks like he's
blackout.
about to lose. He has a blackout moment, and there's a lot of death, tons of death around him. And yeah, so we get to see Jake Lockley, who I think I'm not I don't read the comics, but I know that just from being on the internet, a lot of people that are comics fans have been wondering where this personality had been the whole time, and apparently he was there. Maybe, and now I'm wondering if he was there even earlier on in the series, again, especially in the first
Mm,
episode when he was having a lot of those blackouts. Was that actually Mark, or was that Jake Lockley, which
yeah,
is the famous cab driver personality of Mark Spector / Steven.
yeah.
So yeah, that they revealed that is, and actually Khonshu seems to have the deal with him, and he was kind of manipulating Steven and Mark, and he's really more connected with Jake Lockley to do his bidding. And Jake Lockley seems like he's very happy to carry it out.
And Khonshu suddenly, after 6 episodes of seeming like he's the hero in the story, in that post-credit sequence, he suddenly becomes a much more sinister force.
Yeah, yeah,
So it almost seems like we get rid of Ethan Hawke's character, but the villain in season 2, is it going to be Khonshu himself? Like, I guess if I knew the Moon Knight comics, I might see more where they're going with this.
right.
But for now, it was very intriguing, where it seems like we killed this villain to set up a new villain, but this villain lives inside the head of our hero.
Yeah,
So it's
so
like,
yeah,
how
there's a
is
lot of great story to tell out of that. It's
yeah?
very
I'm like,
unique.
how is Mark gonna fight Jake? Like, I'm just I'm intrigued by how
Yeah,
all that's gonna play out.
so
And
we'll
also,
see.
like we alluded to earlier, there was this thing where it was initially announced as like a limited series event, and somewhere in there they decided that they're going to do a season 2 By the way, I wonder if that's one of the reasons that they had to kill off Ethan Hawke's character. He might have said, like, listen, I'll do a Marvel thing, but I'm just doing one season. You're not going to get me for 2 or 3.
You're
so
not
listen,
going to cage me.
Yeah, and especially too, like if he signed on thinking it was a limited series thing, and then halfway through they're like, we actually have this cool idea for season 2. He's like, yeah, but kill me off. All right, kill me off in the post credit because I don't want to be there for season 2.
Right.
But yeah, so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's a bit of a switcheroo. And now it looks like Moon Knight will be returning with a season 2. And there's already a little bit of talk about what that might look or feel like. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
So let's see. I wanted to get the right quote here. So yeah, coming from Mohammed Diab, who was he directed the finale. He was an executive producer on the entire show. And here's what he had to say about where things seem to be going next or could be going next. He said, first, I don't know why he's being coy, but he says, we don't know if there's a next season. Marvel doesn't go with a conventional way. So even if they like the character and want to extend the world, it could be season 2. It could be a standalone film, or he can join another superhero's journey. I'm kept in the dark just like the fans. We never discussed it being a season 2, but one day there's going to be an expansion, but I don't know how it's going to look like.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot to work with as to what season 2 is going to be like. Right. But I think it's pretty clear that it's coming. And hopefully they bring back the same core members of creative, because I thought they did a bang-up job here with season 1.
Yeah.
Especially with the fact that here's a Marvel show that had pretty much zero MCU connections, whereas all the other MCU-related shows on Disney Plus have played with this idea that we're related to what you see in the movies, and it's all part of that grand tapestry. Moon Knight seemed to relish in the fact that it was in its own little pocket, universe in terms of where this story takes place. And there's news that came out in the last few days that there had been the thought of a MCU crossover or two, a cameo or two, but that those ultimately got cut. So I just want to read a little bit on that.
Sure.
Because that same fella, Mohammed Diab, had this to say in a conversation with Variety. He said, we had the freedom to place it whenever. I want to tell you the very first scene, there was a crossover. And the very end scene, there was a crossover. But as the story developed and we kept changing the scripts, we felt like we don't need that. All of us. It was a collective decision. And then I kept thinking, it's a rule. There has to be a scene at the end that connects us to the MCU, which, I mean, he didn't really do. So I guess it wasn't that much of a rule. But that was another thing that I found bold and that I really appreciated about Moon Knight, is that it really does stand on its own. It's its own story about its own very unique character that's unlike all the other Avengers type characters that we've met so far. And it didn't have to play that thing with like, see, we're related to the movies. We got
it's
an
the
actor.
First one to not have to do that. I mean, Falcon Winter Soldier's going to do Falcon Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, WandaVision, all of them. Yeah.
Even the Star Wars shows, now like Mandalorian bringing in Luke and all that sort of stuff. And, like a lot of these Disney Plus shows seem to feel this need to like, we have to bring in a legacy character into this. Otherwise it doesn't count. And Moon Knight was like, no, our story and the characters are enough on their own. We don't need any other bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty great and pretty bold.
I give him props for that.
Yeah. But all right, so now let's wrap this up with a reaction to season 2, episode 11 of Superman and Lois. So, Brett, I'll let you get started. What did you think of episode 11 of season 2?
Another great episode. The show really is just killing it every week. It really is. So we got to see Soups make his way back right from the beginning of the episode. We pick up right where the two
Yeah,
Jonathans are about to merge, and then we get Soups right out of the portal, right there to save his son. That was great. Yeah, there's some nice family drama and some repercussions from Jonathan seeing his double and kind of learning a little bit about the Bizarro world from Clark. That you know in that world he doesn't have the secret identity, and it did a lot of damage to their family, and that they were kind of like crazy over there.
yeah,
But both boys kind of rebelling against their father a little bit, and like maybe it should be that way. Maybe we shouldn't be hiding. And Jordan a little more drama with Sarah because he can't really reveal what's been going on. And
yeah,
it was a really interesting look into that. There was some nice action this episode, which was really cool. They definitely spent some money on this one.
yeah,
But we spent it primarily all on our Earth. We didn't go
yes,
into the weird zone, the Bizarro world. And the big thing at the end where Clark makes a decision, at least for his best friend Lana, because they had like a little awkward encounter earlier on, to reveal himself that he has been Superman all along. And I thought that was really beautiful and done really, really well. And
yeah,
I was like, I'm okay with this.
yeah, yeah,
What
yeah,
about
yeah.
you? So yeah, what do you think?
I mean, listen, I thought it was another great episode of the show. I love I love how the crazy larger than life stuff affects the interpersonal relationships and the family so much too. I
Yeah,
like seeing the day-to-day impact of some of these big crazy things that happen. And the way that the family reacts to this idea of living in public instead of with the secrets, I think is interesting because, of course, the adults agree that the secret is important and it's, they're thinking bigger picture and they're thinking, it's safer for everyone and it's the better play for us to keep this under our hats. On top of that, they've been living with this. I mean, Clark's been living with it his whole life.
right.
Lois, presumably for at least 20 something years, they've probably been together at this point. So, but for the kids, of course, they see it differently. They're hormonal teenage boys. Imagine living with that kind of a secret and
Yeah,
knowing, like, imagine being Jordan and you have a
yeah,
girlfriend, but you can't tell her that you're half alien and that you have these abilities that sometimes flare up. And of course, she's going to take it as you're being distant and weird and
right.
keeping a part of you from her. But meanwhile, you're doing it for her own good. But at the same time, these boys are apparently like 15 years old. We can't expect them to think big picture. They're gonna be like, Dad, you lied to us for all these years and it did all this damage. Maybe lying wasn't the way to go. And maybe we don't want to grow up to be liars like you had to do. We want to be able to just live our lives, be out and proud, and not have to like watch our steps all the time. And in poor Jordan's case, his relationship is now on fire because of it. So
Right.
you could kind of see on their end why they would be like, why can't I just be Jonathan L here? Why do we have to keep pretending to be someone that we're not? And I thought that was that whole element of it was very interesting.
Yeah, it's great that
Um,
like you said, like when Superman went to this bizarre world, and we also found out that he was away for a month,
yeah,
basically,
33
and he thought he
days.
was there for like a day.
Yeah,
But it's really great how like because normally like in a lesser show, it would just be like, okay, that was just the adventure that Clark had over in the bizarre world, and that's it, and now
yeah,
but whatever, now we're just back to like life on the farm. But the
yeah,
fact that that does come and actually affect the family and have some kind of an impact, everything he does has an impact on the family. And the
yeah.
fact that they've been just like really consistently sticking with that has kept the show so good and
So
interesting,
good.
and allows us to have those Superman moments and those more comic booky, like you said, high fantasy type situations, but then really bring it back, intimate, and it's great. They've been
Yeah.
so good with that. It's a really great angle.
And we're finding out more now with John Henry Irons about like he seems to be working on like a scientific cure to this problem. He's going to try to find a way to close that portal or try to find a way to
Right.
like make sure that whatever Allie has going on in the Bizarro world, she can't bleed it over into this world. Because
Sure.
I was wondering, I feel like him and his daughter, that whole storyline kind of went on the back burner there for a little
Yeah,
while.
they've been gone for like 3-4 episodes. I feel.
Yeah,
like.
I mean they had the thing where while Superman was gone, Steel had stepped in, which I liked.
Right.
But that whole dynamic between his daughter and how she'd been lost and basically like in suspended animation looking for him for years and all that, like
Right.
they finally brought that back in a meaningful way. And it's interesting because she seems to have her own agenda, her own thing in mind that she's preparing while he's trying to find a way to close the portal.
Right.
So I'm really into all that. Although, did you notice that they completely sidestepped our question of, so what does this mean now for Allie? Allie has done the Union. We haven't seen. We still don't know. We did a whole episode.
Yeah,
and
they
since
thought
we
they
did,
vaguely were like, she's super powerful now, and I was like,
yeah,
okay.
we still don't
Well,
know what that means, what that looks like, what the ramifications are. And of course, now we're heading into another hiatus. Again, if I could just pause here, I'm going to pause here.
Well, they're going
just
to
to
pause
say,
also.
I'm going to pause here and just be like, to me, this feels like unprofessional. When you say that you're going to have a show and it premieres on this date and it's every Tuesday at 9, you be there every Tuesday at 9 until the finale.
Yeah.
This weird thing where like we're going to give you 4 episodes, then disappear for 2 weeks. Then we're going to give you 3 episodes and then disappear for 4 weeks. And then we're going to give you 2. Like to me, this just seems like strange. Like no other. I've never followed a show where there's this many breaks in the middle of the season.
So it's funny though because like obviously the most recent one I remember the actress who plays Lois had said it was a COVID thing and it has caused delays, and that might be the case for this, but
okay.
I remember, so I was one of the first people on board when Arrow came out in the CW and the Flash. Yeah. So Arrow I watched like probably, I don't know how many seasons that went, but I watched like a good probably like 4 or 5 seasons of that show. The Flash I maybe watched like the first 2 seasons. If I'm not mistaken, they had these weird breaks and hiatuses, and that was way before
so is this a CW thing?
I think it is, and it used to be random. I remember like Arrow, and then it would be off for like 2 weeks, then it would come back for a few episodes, then be like off for a week, and then like they would do stuff like that too, and like they didn't have the COVID excuse. So now I'm like, is it the COVID excuse or is it just like a production thing?
How they do business somehow?
Maybe they're just like understaffed; they can't get the stuff done in time. I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, I feel like just like, you know what, then like don't premiere it yet until you can air all the episodes.
That's what I'm saying. I would rather say, okay, we're going to delay it 5 weeks, but you'll get every episode in a weekly timely.
And that was episode 11. How many do we have left?
So there's 15 in total. So when they come back from this next hiatus, hopefully we get the final 4 in one strip. Although I wouldn't put it past them that we get 2 and then there's another 3-week break. So I don't know. But yes, so the big thing at the end, the big thing with him telling Lana, first of all, I'm glad they did it because it's funny. I guess it just shows that the writers, the foreshadowing they did was good and it worked on me. When he flies into Smallville after Jonathan gets visions of Jonathan L by the diner and the no good that he's up to, I was very surprised that he was walking around in Clark garb. I figured since he knows Jonathan L is there on the attack, he's going to be in Superman mode. So when he's walking in street clothes and then bumps into Lana, and then that whole awkward exchange happens, and then he sees Jonathan L down the block, but he's too busy caught up in this weird conversation with. I remember thinking like, I don't know if keeping the secret was the right play here when you know that this guy is about to do this, and on top of that, like you really should have come here as Superman. Why did you do this? But then it all makes sense in the end. That was all to sort of set up the fact that, yeah, he chose his secret over doing something, and look how badly that went. It's another thing where thematically in this episode, the weight, the burden of that secret is a big, big deal. And so I just loved it. I thought that was handled really well. I'm trying to think of any other like standout moments.
We should talk about there was a big fight between Jordan and Jonathan L.
And,
There was
Yes.
a Jordan was getting his ass beat pretty bad, but then he finally like was like, "Who's the weaker brother now?" And then he like
Yeah.
jacked him up real good. He punched him into the sky, and then it was really nice shot. Was he flew up with the one arm straight up, and they
Yep.
had a great shot of him flying up with the one arm.
And did you notice he has his own theme?
Oh, I don't think I noticed that. I was
Dude,
still
if you
taking
go
the
back and
visuals.
listen, the composers have given Jordan, like, I want to call it his Superboy theme. He
Yeah.
has his own little horn motif that plays when he's being all super heroic. And it makes me wonder too, like, are they trying to lead to an eventual spin-off for Jordan? You know, maybe they will do a Superboy show. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that was such an amazing moment where like something just clicked. And it seemed almost like his powers activated more. Like, you know, he had to be under that level of duress and stress for like the rest of his abilities to kick in. Because all of a sudden he was like little Superman after that.
Yeah,
You know what I
he
mean?
got like real strong.
Yeah.
I like that you brought up music too, because I did actually want to call out. They didn't, they have that little like motif that they play at the end of the episode. They did a nice version of it when Clark revealed himself to Lana. There was like a nice, like kind of emotional version of it, and I thought it was really nice. I was
really, really nice.
Kudos to, I don't know who the composer is, but good job.
And you know what I got a kind of a kick out of though too? You know, Lana and Clark dated. You know, they have history.
Yeah.
They, at one point in it, that was his first love. They have some sort of chemistry. They have some sort of simpatico. I love that right now, it's completely platonic. I remember there had been some concern early on, like when the first trailers for season 1 came out, when it was still a new show. People were like, oh my God, are they going to play up like a love triangle thing with Clark and Lana and Lois? That's such a betrayal of the character. But meanwhile, they've played it so good. Clark, you never get the sense that there's any kind of romantic or sexual tension between them. It's just a friendship. But when Superman brings her back home or whatever after the ordeal, there's a moment there where she's like,
you want to come in?
You want to come in? Yeah. It was like, woo, because again, there's a connection there. And of course, it's, she would love to have Superman. She's single now,
she wants to get
the husband
super
staying at
sexed
some
up.
dumpy hotel, exactly. So,
poor guy.
So either way, I liked that they built on that they have this history. She invites Superman in for a drink. He says no, and then comes back and lets her know, just so you know, it's me, it's Clark, so don't flirt with me anymore.
Yeah.
No, but that was heavy. That was beautiful. If there's anything about it though, is like in the first episode, in the montage that recaps his life up to this point and recaps his relationship to Lois up to this point. They show the moment when he reveals his truth to Lois, and it's the same move. It's, I'm just going to hover in front of you ever so slightly.
Well, it's
like, I mean, that does do the job, but I guess I was just kind of hoping maybe he would find a different way to do it or whatever. But then again, it was still poignant and the music did it. And then that beautiful moment where like he froze the tree and it actually looked really pretty. And it was like, it made it like a beautiful and poignant moment.
Right.
But I do remember thinking like, this is just what he does. When he wants you to know his secret, he just floats up. But yeah, that was my one thing. The slow float. Like, I guess that's just his move. That's just his move.
Listen, if you want to tell someone you're Superman, like that's the easiest thing to do is like, watch me fly. Just watch me fly. Maybe I'll throw in a little frost breath.
Yeah. So all in all,
floating up, and then he just lasered her.
Wow.
And he was like, now you know.
Although there was one other thing in their interactions that I thought was super hilarious. When he's laying on the floor and he has all these kryptonite shards in his chest, and he's clearly in need of help, and she's like super tentative. She's moving really slowly.
He's like, really take them all out.
And he goes, I'm going to need you to go as fast as you can. Okay. Like I just,
okay.
I love that in that moment he's still being gentle. I don't know if
Yeah.
I would have said it like that because I was shouting at my TV. I'm like, Lana, get the kryptonite out of him.
I would have been
What are
like,
you
get her out.
doing?
Just get
He's
her
just
out
like,
now.
oh, I'm just gonna really
Yeah.
gently, and I'm gonna save the biggest, most stressful one for the last. Take that out first. But either way, so I just thought that was funny. Where he's there, he's like pretty much on the verge of death, and he's like, take it out faster. I need you to do it as fast. Come on, work with me here.
Yeah.
But
That was good.
yeah. Anyway, I love this show because it humanizes Superman in a lot of ways, though, too.
Yeah.
And every step of the way. Yes, he may have all of his godlike powers, but the way he's written and the way Tyler Hoechlin plays him, he's arguably never felt more human to me in live action like this than he
Yeah,
ever
he's
has
really
on
good.
this show. Yeah. So the winning streak continues. Episode 11, season 2, Superman and Lois. Thank you to the people, Todd Helbing. Thank you to all the people who are bringing us this show, because a Superman fan like me has been waiting for this for ages, and now you're going to make me wait another 3 weeks for episode 12.
I know. I hope they give us like 3 episodes and they go, wait 3 more weeks for
like, just to see me have a meltdown. You want them to do that, probably. But I think that just about does it for episode 149 of the Fanboy Podcast.
I think
Brett, how can people find you over on the Twitter?
Well, you can find me at Super Breckon on Twitter.
And right, you can find me at Superman on Film over on the Twitter. And feel free, or actually no, don't feel free. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got all our episodes up there. We've got everything broken down into smaller clips over there.
That's
right. You get to watch us be our stupid animated selves. If you're tired of just listening to us, you could see us in all of our geeky enthusiasm and some of the weird faces we make at each other.
Make a lot of weird faces.
Yes. But as always,
also,
if you go ahead.
Don't forget to email us.
Oh, yes. That's what I was getting at. I said, as always, if you ever have a question or a comment or a topic you would like to hear us hash out here on the show, please email thefanboypodcast@gmail.com. So until next week, be kind.
And stay fanboy.
Adios.
So long.